The Switch has some weird accessories, but something that at least Nintendo hasn't really done a lot of yet that kind of surprises me and honestly even disappoints me a little is stuff like these. Controllers, or at least plastic molded things that you can put controllers into that give you an interesting and kind of weird way to interact with games. Now, yes, Nintendo has messed with this idea a little bit. They released a steering wheel for Mario Kart, and then there is all of Labo, which is kind of its own separate category in my mind. So it's coming down to a lot of third-party companies to do things like this gun and fishing rod. I forgot what a fishing rod was called for a moment. Okay, so first we're going to try the fishing rod out. Why are there two different Kevins and I didn't make either of them? And then we wait for it to load forever with a PS2 style loading screen. Okay, that's reverse, that's not forward, that's forward, okay. So this game uses limited motion controls. Like it still relies heavily on using the buttons and everything, but you're gonna use motion controls for at least casting, which, you know, having the fishing rod shaped thing works for, and then for reeling in, which is why this is shaped this way. So let's actually get to a spot to fish, and then you pull back. I didn't do it heavy enough and then freaked out. Okay, let's try this again. Try this again. Aha! I didn't go very far. Then we're in the ocean. I don't see any fish though. I'm just gonna slowly reel in, huh? Anything here? We just reel it in. Is this even, I almost wonder if like, maybe it's not enough? Is that still no fish anywhere? Okay, so next let's try out the rifle, which does use a little more precise motion controls, at least a little more naturally, because you're using it to aim the gun just a little bit. The game's still not great, but at least the motion controls are working here. Sadly, it's not like the Wii where, just because of how the motion controls work differently, it's not a situation where, you know, you can point and aim somewhere on the screen and that's where you hit. Instead, you're still using a stick to look around, but you can make little adjustments. It's kind of like aiming a bow in Zelda. Okay, look guys, neither of these accessories are particularly good. Well, at least the game is there for. It's not really their fault that they're just designed for stuff that is this way. But you know, it gets me thinking though about all the stuff we've seen in the past that enjoys the idea of using a controller inside of something else. Now, normally when people think of this concept, they think a lot about the Wii because there was a lot of Wii accessories that were built around that, whether it's the wheel or other gun attachments like this, or even the bowling ball that existed for some reason. But actually, when it comes to Nintendo, this concept goes way further back than that. The first time Nintendo actually had an accessory where you put a controller inside of something else to get a bizarre and weird way to control a game was Rob the Robot. And to actually show you guys this, we actually need to go get one. So let's go right now. So we got lucky and found the robot we were looking for, and it was in great condition too, so let's get back to the office and check it out. Nowadays, a lot of people know Rob the Robot from his appearances in the Super Smash Bros. Series of games, but I find that a lot of people don't actually know what Rob the Robot is. You know, they know that it's a reference to some kind of old school Nintendo thing, it's a product they sold, but they don't know why he exists or what it even did for the old school systems. And it's actually very interesting. So Rob actually stands for Robotic Operating Buddy, and the entire concept is that he plays games alongside you where you'll give him commands by doing stuff on the screen, and then he will hit buttons on the Nintendo controller through a very indirect method that we're gonna actually show you in a little bit. But the reason why he exists is because it was basically a way for Nintendo to tell people that the NES wasn't a gaming system. See, back when Nintendo was first coming over to the US to try and sell their systems, the United States wasn't very happy with video games. There was a major crash back in '83, and all the major companies that were around for the US in gaming just did not do well. So there was this very heavy stigma attached to gaming consoles just not being a good investment or something that people should really buy. So to try and combat that, Nintendo instead marketed their system as a very advanced toy. So you're buying the NES, but the actual thing is Rob the Robot. He's this toy that plays games with you. The games aren't really the focus, don't worry about that. You have to buy this with it, but the robot is really the focus.
When you master Rob, the video robot, and meet the challenge of Gyrobite, you're playing with power. The Nintendo Entertainment System Deluxe set, batteries not included.
But it was a gamble that really paid off and eventually got it into a lot more households. Now, despite the fact that Rob the Robot was the really heavy focus of how they advertised the Nintendo early on, there's only 2 games that actually make use of him. Gyromite, which we have hooked up and ready to go right now, and then a game called Stack Up. Now, each of these would use different attachments on Rob and would interact with him in different ways, but we're gonna actually take a look at how you would play with Rob in Gyromite. So the way Rob would work is actually very similar to a light gun that you'd use for something like Duck Hunt, where using this controller, I'm gonna input different commands in the game, and the game's gonna flash certain lights that Rob's gonna see, recognize, and do that command. So here we are on the map right here, and so the entire goal of this game is you're trying to navigate around it, and you're trying to raise and lower these colorful pipes. So first, let's move this blue pipe, which is gonna take a lot of work. He's not on. First, we have to pick up one of the spinners. Pick it up. There we go. This is all to raise one single pillar, by the way. It's gonna take a second. We gotta get it spinning because it has to be able to stand on its own. There we go. Pick it back up. And drop it down. And there we go. And that hits the button. All of that. Now, let's say you wanted to be able to also hit the red button right after, but still have the blue button pressed down. Well, that's why the spinner is important, because we can let go of it, and it's still gonna stay in place. Though, as it starts to lose momentum, it's gonna eventually fall off, and that's a whole nother problem. So, as you can see, it takes a lot to be able to actually play this game properly with Rob, almost a little too much. To be honest, this game is a lot of fun with 2 actual people, but with Rob, it's a little annoying and tedious over time. But it's still a really interesting idea, and just for its time, this was such cool tech. Now, obviously, I don't think Nintendo necessarily needs to make a new Rob the Robot for the Switch, but this all goes once again to the idea of just really interesting accessories that involve docking controller in some different method. And I really think the Switch can benefit from more design ideas like that, because right now, we basically just have a steering wheel, and robots are cool.